Here's a great idea for your next outing. A cruise of the L.A. Harbor on a Spirit Cruises yacht. Spirit Cruises offers everything you need to relax and enjoy your time on the water. For more information, call 310-548-8080 or visit spiritmarine.com.
And time now for another Thrashpie radio podcast. Thanks for being here. I am Thrashpie, your favorite guy. I celebrate the legendary pure rock format on Southern California's heavy metal giant, heavy metal flagship, KNAC-FM. Still into the Gregg Steele interview this time around, and as insightful as the first, I'm hoping. And I know, so I'll be sharing portions of this interview as we go out to this little series here. Interestingly enough, when we first went on the air, that's some 30 years ago, January 8th, 86, there was really no competition for KNAC in this marketplace. KMET had dabbled with playing metal music and dropped it. I don't know that KLOS had ever gone into it or experimented with it or even added anything like anything we were playing at the outset. And so, again, we had really no competition. That started to change as we grew. I think the Whitesnake record was really a huge part of our early growth because it was just giant. And stations like KLOS, had to start playing it. Then we began to get, resonance from across the country, particularly in the Northeast, New York City. Guy was at Z100, and he was the guy he's guilty of creating the Q morning zoos, which perhaps he should be banished from America for at that point. But I take that back. But at any rate, we started to be competitive on a different level. People took notice. And in fact, that guy from Z100 in New York came to Los Angeles thinking he was going to put us out of business and take our audience with a new format that he called the Rock 40. So, Gregg Steele, knowing all of this was in the works, came to KNAC, and I knew how nervous I was coming on the air in the early parts of the KNAC birth and launch, and what a competitive situation it was at that point with just KLOS and just some of the other ones. So it had to have been a challenging feeling for Gregg Steele.
So I was pretty prepared for a pretty competitive fight. I knew of Kerry Kurlop, the gentleman that moved into the pirate role, running that station.
One second. Was Shannon there when you started, or was he already gone?
I don't think so. I think that Kerry and I probably started almost the same. Kerry had been in some pretty tough battles in Tampa, but he was at a legendary radio station, and he had a different kind of group of battles down there.
Yeah, just a side note, that's where he knew of me, because I was on the morning there. It was my second or third morning show at WZNE Tampa up against him. And
wow.
I
wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's how he, when I contacted him at KLOS, that's how he knew me.
Well, not to mention the fact that, if he could add to his already growing morning show by bringing on somebody who understood mornings,
yeah,
and maybe pull them away from a potential future competitor. And again, not that KLOS and KNAC were necessarily competing at the time, but clearly when he got to Pirate, it was like, well, I got a no-brainer. Now this is the guy that I should put into that role. So
right.
That association is probably the continue to that. But yeah, I knew that Kerry was no slouch, and he had done some really great things, and so. I expected that we were in for, a pretty good fight. But I also counted on, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog or whatever.
Yeah.
It's kind of like you always bet on crazy. You don't, crazy's gonna win that fight. And we just had to continue to be crazy. We had to continue to street fight, Another odd thing that happened during this transition that I don't know has really been, you don't put this together too quickly. Most people don't, but our promotion director, who was integral in the success of the radio station, just knew the ground, knew the market, knew the territory, knew the ins and outs, knew everything, this fellow named Tom Marr.
Yeah.
Because he had done such a kick-ass job, guess what? Guns N' Roses decided they want to hire him. And, now they're setting up the double record, Use Your Illusions, and boom, program director's gone, boom, promotion director's gone. So, we had now two hands sort of tied behind our backs. Mm-hmm. On top of that, we also had a morning show, missing. We had lost you over to KLOS and eventually over to Pirate. And then Gonzo, I think Pam and Gonzo just weren't working out for whatever reason.
I think that's what it was, yeah. I don't know the whole story, but there's the funny thing is, Greg, when they were both here at this little get together that we had, it was pretty. They were amiable, but it was obvious that I don't know. I don't know.
You never forget when you lose you never forget when you lose the job at the greatest situation you've ever had.
Right.
Right. And Gons went out and did some really great stuff, and Pam too. But it's like you try to be amiable, and it's like it's still, especially when you're reminiscing. All you can do is think back to when you weren't there when everybody else was. So, but nonetheless, so you're out of morning show because Gons is gone. Don't have a morning show. Don't have a promotion director. Have a brand new program director. Kind of a lot of key components in, as you know, the success of a radio station. You need to have a great morning show. You need to have smart programming. You need to have great promotions. We had all of them were gone or were, so we were kind of bereft of all of the components for making a success. I was able to hire a guy who had a lot of experience in the market working with the concert promoters. We hired a guy from Avalon, which was a big concert promoter. We hired Don Weiner, and he did an amazing job. And then I hired a guy to do mornings called Bones.
Bones. Never met him, but yeah.
Yeah, Bones got hired as, we searched the world over high and low. And as you can probably attest, and I certainly can, because the reason one of the reasons I left the job is it paid so horribly.
Yeah.
How was I going to find a guy that was going to come to Los Angeles and morning drive in Los Angeles and make the kind of money that we had to offer? And again, that is no disrespect to Bones, but when we hired him, it was like, okay, you only have so much to work with. Get a guy that you think can be competent, be skilled, take good direction, and move. We hired a guy who, and I'm still friends with him to this day, but he was a guy that, we tried to fit into the peg that was KNAC, and it just never fit.
Right.
But, besides the fact that, that was just another, thing that we had to deal with the turnover. But, fortunately, we had such a great rest of the staff. While Paul was there, there was turnover. You had the advantage of taking on Ton Mastery.
Now, was she gone when you got there? Yeah, she was gone. Yeah. She was a Pirate, right? Yeah.
Yeah, she got to Pirate about the same time you guys started up with Carrie, I think.
All right.
But again, think of what Carrie. This is the competitor that Carrie was. He knew he had you in his pocket because you were working for him at KLOS, and he knew the damage that you could have to KNAC by doing the great radio that you did while at KNAC against KNAC while they were turning their sights more to us with a better signal that will also impact KLOS. But he also took Ton, who was a very, very well received superstar in the afternoons on our radio platform. So we had lots of holes. We were kind of bleeding in a few places. But I got to say, I think Long Paul stepped up and did a great job. I believe that, Lori Free did a good job in middays. Dangerous Darren was always solid at night, and let's not forget Nasty Neil.
Oh, yeah.
And all of our fine weekend staff, Animal Analytics, who can ever think of KNAC without thinking about Mike Stark?
He's there.
We had a lot of superstars. Craig Williams, the amount of impact that he had with the local show, not only when it was the bands that were living on the Sunset Strip at the time, but he was the guy that actually got Rage Against the Machine played before anybody. And he was a part of the future of what metal sound is. And, we had all those people on our airwaves and in our support group. And there's tons of people. I go on and on. Think about, like, I don't know if but like Aisa Juarez, she was the heart and soul everything that happened with that company. And she's been running the operations for the promotion department for KNAC in Los Angeles for a large number of years. I mean, she clearly learned a lot while she was there, but, she was so skilled and talented that she was going to go on to even greater things. That, like, these are the people that were inside the walls of this radio station.
Yeah, very true.
And there are so many more that I could go on and on about.
It's just about all of them, for goodness sakes. It's really hard to mention one, and I know exactly where you're coming from.
I feel bad if I've left anybody out.
Well, not to worry about that. So with Pirate and all of these things in sort of going against you, the holes that you mentioned and so forth, did you see your position against that competition, meaning Pirate Radio, direct competition, as defensive, or were you in any way offensive? How did you view it? What did you think?
Well, we knew that we were going to have to be defensive, but again, people always tell you that defense wins games, but if you never score 1 point, you will lose, or at least tie. But you cannot win if you do not have some offense. So our goal was find opportunities to be as defensive to the turf that we've had and maintained for a long period of time, meaning hard rock and heavy metal all through the Southland, but be aggressive and never back down and never let the competition think that we're going to let them have something. We're not going to let them have Hollywood. We're not going to let them have the Valley. We're not going to let them have places that we didn't have great signals. In one of the first things that we did that is stupid, but here's what happens when you work with rock bands. Okay, they have a new record, and they want to make every radio station and every marketing opportunity, they want to do something fair and even for somebody. So no outlet can say, well, how come you did this with those people? It's like, well, I gave you this. Oh, okay, well, yeah, you're right. So there was a band that we had helped develop and start, Alice in Chains, and they were about to make a really big record. Pam Edwards is now leaving, and she's going to be at Columbia Records and be in charge of developing this next big wave of Alice in Chains, and because Alice in Chains is on Columbia. And Pam can't show she's favoring us because it's her new job, man. She can't run the risk of looking bad to Pirate and this new radio station that's going to set L.A. and the world on fire, and they've got all this, powder in their guns with all of the staffing that they've done and the great head start they had with Scott Shannon. And so we had done a listener trip to Cabo with Alice in Chains and a bunch of other bands. So, we had them play our charity event, the Children of the Night benefit with Ozzy and others. But then they played at a private listener event that we did in Cabo. So as a payback, Pirate got to do a free show with the band at the Whiskey. I think it was the Whiskey. So we're like, well, that sucks. I'm like, so what are we going to do about it? Like, we get that there's a fairness that has to happen. We get that we got stuff, and so now the other radio station is going to have to get something. So I was like, why don't we go and park the vans up front of the Whiskey and just give them rolls of quarters and sit there all day putting coins in? I'm like, so if it's a pirate radio show, but the KNAC vans are lining the building with, in front of the venue, like, how is that not just telling Pirate, you can try to screw with us, but we're not going anywhere. Our wagons are circled, and you are inside of our circle. So we did that, and kept vans there all day. Get a phone call. I got a phone call from Kerry. He's like, "You got to move the vans." I'm like,
no, he did not.
Like, yeah, and I'm like, I don't got to move the vans because the last time I checked, these are public streets, and I've got quarters, and I could be here all day. I'll be here all day. You want to have a show? Have a show. But I'm going to be out there before your fans get in there. I'm going to be out there after your fans get out. And, whether that was a smart move or a bad move, good move, whatever, didn't really matter. I didn't think about what the impact was, other than like psychologically, I wanted to make sure that the people at the Pirate knew that we were not to be intimidated and we were not going away. And we're just going to stand here and you can't make us move. So that was sort of a offensive / defensive move.
That's classic radio competition, classic 101, radio competition. That's what that is. It exactly is. So, well, when you came into to the job, Gregg, were there any marching orders for you in terms of like numbers or anything like that from Gary?
No, and the thing that Gary always knew is that sure we'd like to have numbers, but we're not going to sell nationally as well as we're going to sell our fans reacting to the things that we do on the street. So if we did great events and if we worked well with our advertisers to create bonds between our listeners and what we were trying to do, then we were winning. The only thing that we didn't want to do was to be beat on the street. Exactly.
So thank God we had a guy like Gregg Steele at that time in history who really understood that it was all about our audience, having them see us, having be out there in their face. There's an old story. The guy used to, long time ago, when I was much younger, coached Ohio State football, Woody Hayes. Everybody knows about Woody Hayes, or should. And he had a tailback or a running back or whatever the guy was, and he'd send him off tackle, and the guy would, he would get a foot past the line of scrimmage and get tackled. He'd send him off tackle again, and he'd get a foot past the line, and it just was not working. And he pulls the kid off of the field and says, "Son, you got to run where they ain't." And that's exactly what KNAC had to do. We had to be good on the street. And again, thank God for a guy like Gregg Steele who knew where our only chance for success was. All right. I'll have more insight from our Gregg Steele interview, and I'm getting a big kick out of this, and I hope you are. This is a series of Thrashpie radio podcasts. So your comments and correspondence of any kind, welcome at thrashpieradio@gmail.com. Please do give us a like and a share. And again, keep your eye on your Facebook page for the next Thrashpie radio podcast.